everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Bex. I am the Events and Subscriptions Coordinator here at Books Are Magic, and we are so excited to have Andrés Cerpa and Iain Haley Pollock with us tonight to celebrate the Palace. I just have a few housekeeping notes to go over before we get started. I will be doing a hand raise Q&A near the end of the night. Just think of your questions, not your comments. Think of your questions. Thank you. I just said it the other night and I didn't get a single laugh. And I got really scared and I had to be like, I'm sorry, you can say whatever you want. We'll get them answered. Andrés has very graciously pre-signed all your books, but we'll also be personalizing after the event. We'll let you know where and when to line up for that. If you're joining us virtually in the live stream, we'd love to encourage you to buy copies of The Palace, and the link in the description. The Palace is also our February subscription pick for poetry. It's our secret favorite subscription. So really excited to have picked this. And the book you're all going to be purchasing tonight, because Valentine's Day is coming up, and you need gifts. The Palace, from Puerto Rico to mythological forests, The Palace charts a family's journey to build a life and home in a world that is often violent and rife with economic instability, as the speaker must also confront his own turbulent past and strive to imagine new ways forward. Star of tonight's show, Andrés Cerpa is the author of 2 previous books of poetry, Bicycle in a Ransacked City, an Elegy, and The Vault, which was long listed for a National Book Award and celebrated as one of the best books of poetry of 2021 by the New York Times. A recipient of a McDowell Fellowship, his writing has appeared in many esteemed publications, and he is an educator and faculty member of the Randolph MFA program. Conversation extraordinaire Iain Haley Pollock is the author of 3 poetry collections, Spit Back a Boy, Ghost, Like a Place, and All the Possible Bodies, which we also have here for you to purchase tonight. If you ask nicely, Iain will sign them. His poems have appeared in likewise many esteemed publications, and he has received several honors, including but not limited to the Cave Canem Poetry Prize, the NIFA Artist Fellowship in Poetry, and a nomination for the NAACP Image Award. He serves as director of the MFA program in creative writing at Manhattanville University in Purchase. Without any further ado, please join me in the warmest welcome to Andrés and Iain. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you to Books Are Magic. I know you're staying here late. This is my 3rd book launch with Books Are Magic, so I like the tradition. We'll try and keep it going. So I'm going to read 4 poems, and then Iain and I are going to talk about poetry. And thanks for being here. It's a cold night. The poems will be dark, but they'll be slightly uplifting in other moments. So I'll first read the first poem of the book. It's called Late Work. I feel compelled to give you an ending, a promise of hope, to move against despair, even if the act is simple as falling in love. Another city, a long day casting shadows in the park. I lost something and can't get over the fact. The most powerful world was the world of destruction and high. And or I ran through the cane fields in splendor. When the interior puzzled with the physical world, I cut myself down. The way and I became brothers. Not blood, not sugar, not rust. Snow in Cavichosa. In the too soon and always, I held the machete. I built myself a life. All right, the clouds out there. The second poem, it's called "We Are the Transient Ones," and it's a quote by a poet that I really like, named Franz Wright. It was like one of the last things that he wrote. It was kind of like a fragment. Too soon, I became the thing that hunted and slept and slept alone, devoid of ritual. In the apartment, fathers up light. Metaphor for the mind, but still a heart of winter. Speedball, goodbye. And why is it so hard to tell the truth about the past? What remains almost untouched? Our time in the orchard where you became the orchard, then laughed in a crevice of trees. I can feel the whispers of owls so far north. No human will ever see them again. Memory is a dead animal, lost in its grandeur. A wolf split and howling. A hawk as small as a leaf. Thank you. I'm gonna read this poem. So the book is called The Palace. In a lot of ways, it's kind of mythological, but like spliced with the real. This is on kind of the heavy mythological side. It's called The Map. And I'll just let it go. You'll get it eventually. All right. The Map. There was no applause when God entered the labyrinth, carrying a dead man as an example by his throat. There were birds and lathe work, but the people that tended its growth had gone home to their corner encampments to let your children go gaunt, to be buried, to be blindfolded by history, then asked to lead the way. Hunger is a teacher, God said. It masters even time. For when hunger became, the forest became a cacophony of voices, and every hoof print and footfall became us alert. In hunger, being alive was being alive for each and every cell. The labyrinth is a cell. North, and I kept running. Abuela died with a gold-plated cross on her neck. I ran through the woods with a gold-plated cross on my neck. Come sit down. We got you a seat. This is a nicer one. I think this is like an ode in a way. This is like an ode in a way to small talk. It's dedicated to my friends.
What is this?
We're done.
All right.
It's still me, you know.
I got too excited. That's fair.
It's called Fog in the Mouth of the Mountain. There's a feeling within me I can't touch that reminds me of a heaven ascending. In always autumn where the sunset lingers in a cache for gold like splendor. And today I am alive by a thread, a road that ends with my friends opening their arms, the mountains beneath them, as they say simple things like it's good to see you, it's been too long, and how's the drive? My buddy. Now there's just one more poem before we get to talk, which is great. It's also titled Late Work. There are a bunch of titles that are the same throughout this thing. I'm not so good at titles, so if you find one, just ride with it as long as you can. That's how I feel. A fear of the poem is a fear of the future, and I am afraid. In the dark heirloom of the earth, I was nourished, am nourished. I questioned God. The country's ugly gossamer weaves in other dusk. The horizon and starved horses. Everything all at once. As we walk, I hold the secret vein, my only child, an emerald in the heirloom of the earth.
Man, I could listen to you read poems all day, every day. Amazing. It's interesting. When I was reading the book, I imagined, to the best of my ability, you reading the poems with your specific style, but then hearing it just takes it to that next level. So thank you so much for spending some time reading poems. And don't worry, audience, I'm going to make him read some more. Embedded in my questions or requests to read poems. Thank you so much for having me be in conversation with you, and thank you for the chance to read this book. You all are in for a treat when you get to read it. Just another hit from the man. So, as compared to your first two collections, I see sort of recognizable similarities in tone and in some of the concerns, but there are also differences. So, for example, with regard to grief, as we just heard, it's present and palpable in the poems, but I would say that grief has moved maybe from an open wound to scar tissue. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached capturing that sort of the persistence of grief in images and sort of formally as well?
Oh yeah. Thanks for reading it. Thanks for asking a good question. And thanks for reading the other ones too. You know what I mean? We have a scholar.
A fan.
I think that I'm very cognizant of like the connections that are happening between the different books. And so when I am writing, I'm trying to think about, that was already there. I already talked about it in a certain way. So there are new relationships to similar sort of like memories or things, but I'm trying to like find the gap in between it. But I do think that the majority of the work that I'm doing is like thinking about memory in the past. And it's almost as if the images that repeat throughout the books, or that stylistically some tone sounds the same, it's almost like I have like a different set of paints to do it. Right, like before it was like a midnight landscape, and it might be the same landscape, but like it is early morning now. So there's a different relationship to the same place, and so I think it like looks different, and then therefore tonally I think there's like a much more sort of like positive or warm relationship to the past in this book, even though like it was just dark.
Yeah, and without sort of obliterating the pain that has come before, even as there's like a warming and a lightening.
Yeah, I think that when sad things happen too, like sometimes they're devastating to think about when they're close, but as time goes on, like there can be a lot of like warmth inside of like an enjoyment of the memory in a lot of ways. So I think that's coming through.
Yeah, to stick with the trope of painting that you just brought up, it seems like one of the paints that you're using is distillation, right? Like, which is to say, some of these poems are really short.
Yeah.
And especially as compared to the other books. What drove you towards that distillation, And before you answer that question, could you read one of those short ones? I like In Locust and Wild Honey.
Oh, okay. In Locust and Wild Honey. For money. For bread.
Look, we have a book. I know you want it. I know you want it. I mean, I don't know any of my poems by heart.
This is now in Locust and Wild Honey. For money, for bread, corridor by corridor, we swept the torn villas. To suffer the less, we suffered. It's harder to remember the smaller one. I don't know. Yeah. I think that the process of the longer poems, because I've done that more, I can think about them as like a series of images get like stacked upon one another in a lot of ways, right? And I'm trying to just connect. And sometimes even for me, those individual things kind of like get lost in it. And I want there to be just like a breath in the trajectory of the book, but also hear the smaller poems. I think, so like there's this conceptual thing that's like mythological that's kind of happening, and there's this palace and there's this labyrinth. And sometimes I think like just giving a small sketch will help like locate people. Like, okay, I don't know the completeness of this world, but I know that somewhere people are sweeping torn villas, and like that is their job. And just allowing that to happen can kind of like let people rest and like see kind of like the world that's there.
Yeah, but yes, and I also appreciated how you ground, like in the poem you just read, how you grounded in something sort of beyond the mythological that's recognizable in our own world. And I think that distillation creates such a intensity. It's almost like a lightning shot at the end of that poem. And there are the mythological short poems, but some of them are about your childhood and adolescence. Why did you turn to short poems when sort of dealing with being 17?
Oh, the ones about adolescence, I think there's like two of them, right? Like one's like, you know, will I be 17 on a rooftop forever? It just like kept coming back and wouldn't fit anywhere else. It kept coming back and it wouldn't feel anywhere else, and I felt like, okay, so that might signal, and I enjoy that 9. It might signal that it's of like such importance in like grounding the context of like where the speaker is, like mentally, that I should just leave it there. So hopefully it's memorable.
Yeah, that rooftop. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I know there are always those lines that get stuck in your head, but they don't quite fit in a poem, and maybe they're their own thing, right?
Yeah, and I have a tendency to just like stick all the rejects together, like, bad news bears kind of situation.
I mean, that's like its own poetic puzzle, right? How do you connect all those things?
Yeah.
I have other questions about short poems. I might come back to them later on. So,
What are you trying to write, short poems?
hell no.
You're like a mid-range.
I'm a mid-range. Yeah.
Mid-range
I got a
jumper.
mid-range game.
Yeah.
Keep me out of the paint and inside the 3-point line. I want to talk about some thematic things as well. Like, specifically, one place where I saw a difference in this book from the previous two were sort of around ideas of diaspora that come up, particularly the Puerto Rican diaspora. And you mentioned that Late Work was a poem title that came up multiple times. There are 3 poems in the book called Diaspora Poem, and the phrase "the dream of diaspora" comes up in the poem Machete. Can you read us one of those? See, I'm working for you, getting more poems right. Can you read one of the diaspora poems and like talk to us about what opened up that line of thinking about diaspora this time around?
So I think they repeat. To contextualize it, I think that like time is kind of funky in this book, and so things are happening. There's a simultaneity about time. Like a memory can launch you back, and then you kind of like don't know where you are. You're like dislocated. So this poem is diaspora poem, page 30. I see people reading along, so let's ride with it. The past holds forever larger space in the mind. Example. She is dead, but I'm playing dominoes with my abuela in her kitchen when she loses the past tense completely. The second section 8 bars are a precise and rusted script, a labyrinth that frames the weathered flag of Puerto Rico, as she describes the tortured parrot that the professor at UPR, who asked her, "What do you want to study?" keeps in his office. He must be dead now too, but his question lives like one blue falling as the animal again rips at its wings. I don't know. I don't know why I'm visiting. I can't leave my father at home. Abuela says, "Andrés, they are offering me a scholarship." But we, Sister Maria and Mommy and me, rushed home after his questions. Abuela was proud that I studied in a different state, that I majored in English, that too soon I, like my father, would hold a degree. We didn't come to this country to starve. We came here to study and eat. I think that I was looking for different places to write into, right? And I think that in the trajectory of this book in particular, I think my abuela, my grandmother, they pop up much more. I don't think they popped up really at all in other books. And I kept thinking back about them, about their lives, and just about how one or two things can like alter the trajectory of a life. Like so much so. It can just be you move into this apartment or you move into this apartment. All of a sudden you're in this school district or you're in that school district. And I was like looking at those moments that they sort of had no control over and how that can play into the trajectory of not only one person, but their entire life. Now I'd say, to bring it back to you, All the Possible Bodies, this is Iain's new book that just came out on Alice James, is amazing. Yeah, exactly, it's good. I feel it like your title poem, All the Possible Bodies, that thinks about, how much depends on one human being and how connected they are. I think of trying to sort of like tap into that. But at the same moment in time, like the parrot here, this parrot does not exist in like reality in the context of any story that I have. Like I made it up. Except I used to go to this car wash on Castleton Avenue, and they had a parrot there, and it was so cold, and it was always like ripping out its wing. And I feel like I would just wait for my car to be washed to go through the thing and like be looking at this parrot. And it's like, you don't belong here, right? And like the fact that you feel so confined is like making you turn in on yourself. And that is not dissimilar to things people feel out there in the world as they move and get further and further away. Like it lines up because in certain ways, like there's all these ideas about what's so cold here, right? It was so open beforehand. And so like that's kind of what I'm trying to tap into, I think.
The poetic imagination is wild. Just this memory of a parrot gets worked into a story about education and kind of working for your ancestors and working towards dreams that your predecessors had. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is wild. It's just like connect and connect and connect, like wherever it can come, the inspiration. That's a little bit about like the short poem. Just like sometimes one image, like one thing, just like it stays with you.
Yeah.
And you're not exactly sure what to do with it for a long time, and eventually, hopefully, it clicks.
There's one thing I appreciated about this book is your ability to capture narrative in lyric and just to distill that narrative down. It's almost like you cut the beginning and end off the narrative and just like let the middle stay. And I think you sort of leaned into the mystery of storytelling and didn't overdetermine what the reader could get out of that story.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I want that to happen. I feel like life as it happens is so mysterious to us.
Yeah.
And I want the poem to not be prescriptive, but to like feel real. And so I think that some of that's my hope. I feel like I'm a lyric poet that works in narrative snippets. Like I just get one, it's almost like a big montage.
Yeah, and I think it works really well because as a reader, I'm always having to do work, right? I'm never told what the story is about, which is like the worst moment in any narrative, right? Is when all conclusions are foreclosed for you. Sticking with the ideas of the lyrical, I know through your body of work you've aimed towards the ethereal aesthetically, and yet many of the poems in this book express like really concrete worries about sort of concrete economic worries, especially about the affordability of owning a house, for example. How did you go about like sort of marrying that ethereal style with like very grounded quotidian concerns like making money and surviving and buying houses and making sure you can afford children, all that stuff?
Yeah. I feel like I want the book is more political than any other book that I've written, I think, and overtly so. And part of that stems from, I wake up 5 days a week, I go to work, I do it for money, right? I like it a lot, right? And I just feel amongst, I guess, like my friends, my generation in a lot of ways in New York, that there's a lot of concern about like how to plan for the future in a lot of ways. And so when I'm trying to think about my generation, we're not very unique, right? Like our particular circumstances are unique, but when I think about the whole diaspora, people have been worrying about that forever. It's just like, how can I move it in time to like make it updated so it feels sort of like relevant in a lot of ways. And I think about it as like generation upon generation has these very particular concerns that are basically the same concern. So we go to myth to learn something. We go to like the ethereal, these large things. When you think about a wolf, you think something is angry, you think something is dangerous, right? Rent. It's angry and dangerous. So like, how can I like marry those two things is kind of the question I begin to enter. And like, I like just stylistically and personally, like writing about owls moving out to the Arctic or whatever it is. So I need to figure out how to like take something that is very, very far from me and bring it close and have them like create a little bit of tension, like two image systems converging.
Yeah, that happens a lot in these poems. That there's like a pivot to an image that at first I'm like, where are we headed? And then by the end of the poem, it makes sort of perfect sense how these two sets of images are working together. Coming back to distillation, was that also a way of, was distillation a technique that you were using in this sort of marriage of the ethereal and the grounded?
Yeah, I think so. In terms of distillation, I think that, one word can hold, it's like a trap door for memory, right? Like I think that we all have like these different relationships, very specific relationships to words, right? So like yellow means something to you, yellow means something to me. And when I say the word yellow, I have a bunch of different associations. So I'm trying to say the word yellow and give a snippet of like what the association is supposed to be. And like, I don't want to go spiral out on just my pontification upon yellow, right? But I think that like saying, okay, what is most important to me at this one moment? And I think that like short story writing, I read a lot of short stories during the process. I just like want the conflict to be there and the conflict to be clear.
Yeah.
Right? This is the problem. This is how I feel about it. And I think anything that's outside of that, I try to peel back at least a little bit. You know, I'm indulgent. There's some long poems in there too. But yeah.
Yeah, but the longest poem is fragmentary. Is it in the country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's at the end.
Yeah, I love that poem. I'm not gonna make you read it because it's long.
Yeah.
But
Be here.
Yeah, y'all should read it in a few minutes when we're done. You mentioned the political aspect of the book, which again was compared to the other books that sort of stood out to me, but especially because you write in the poem, "I am every bomb in my safety." You say, quote, "I once thought no political poems," end quote. What I mean, you talked about this a little bit, but could you kind of dig deeper on like what changed? Why were you sort of at one point anti-political poem and then made this turn in a more political direction?
It's a good question. In part, I've seen in like my observations in this like poetry world or the literary world that like you can get boxed in very quickly. Like, you are a political poet, we will now ask you questions about politics. And I think for my first book, my second book, there were things that I wanted to write about that did not feel like deeply connected to politics. And it seemed odd for me to like be on a stage talking about my political views when there are like much smarter people that can do that. I'd much rather talk about like language and the ethereal and things like that. But in this book, I started thinking about, well, COVID happened. Remember that time? Well, COVID happened. And I think that some of the heart of this book is during COVID, I went from full-time to an adjunct professor and I started working for the census. Going to door. Oh,
I forgot about your census phase.
yeah, my census phase. I can't wait till the 2030. I'm taking a sabbatical. It's awesome. But I just think that like walking around, trying to talk to people, and just seeing like the wildness of just like economic disenfranchisement, just like how wealth works in different neighborhoods, how things change so quickly, and just like having intimate conversations with people, like asking them serious questions about their life, reminded me that just walking around every day, like we are living in a place that affects us deeply, right? And spiritually. And in this book, I was trying to find a way to do it my way. And my way, I think, is like splitting that with a more ethereal. It's telling small snippets of stories about myself. It's inventing something like this like parrot that exists and trying to touch it without getting into the weeds of the details to just make it feel as though, all right, this is the human spirit interacting with the state. And these are some of the subtle and some very, very not so subtle ways that it is interacting with your daily life and these characters. So it felt like I needed to figure out I bucked against it, young poet being like, no. And then I've like come around and seen, well, I can do it in a way that like feels authentic to me, as opposed to feeling pressure to automatically do it. You're a Puerto Rican writer, you gotta talk about Puerto Rico.
Before I open it up to folks, could you read that poem, or you could read any other poem?
Oh, I have every poem.
Yeah, or you could read something.
Um,
I just want to know the taste.
oh, I'm just gonna read. I'll read one of the last poems. I'm not gonna read every. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right.
That's a good. That's a good substitute.
All
That's
right.
one of my favorites.
It's a ghost flag hours open map. It's kind of from the perspective of a knife. There's a knife that's happening in this whole book. Then one night, I became the knife the tree swallowed. An heirloom, a century of leaving the wound and wounded alone. The ancestors made, killed, then half buried me in green. In the secret ring, my blue handle exposed to the world. Now I am swaddled and final. From their movement, a scar. Everyone I love is here.
All right, those of you whom the poet loves, what questions do you have? I will try my best to paraphrase your question.
I have two questions, if that's okay. And they're really questions. Okay, so the first question is, if memory serves, the vault is bifurcated into two sections. And in a way, you could kind of read them together as like one long poem. And especially that like second half is like a prolonged meditation, if you will. So I'm wondering what your thought process was around the structure of this, because it's different in regards to, of course, there are thematic themes that connect, but it seems like the poems, having not read it yet, are also self-contained.
Yeah.
And then my second question is just, you mentioned reading short stories during the writing of this, and I'm curious to know like what writers or collections you read.
So first question was about the structure of this book and how Andrés arrived at it. I would just anecdotally say he is a master of structure. My book is as it is because of this man. And the second is about short stories and what short stories was he reading as he finished it.
This book, I think the poems are much more self-contained. Like I can take a poem out, you can read it, and you kind of know what's going on. Or at least that's my hope. At the same time, I think that what we spoke about a little bit earlier was that I'm trying to build an outline of this world, a world that is quite familiar to us, but at the same time pretty mysterious in a lot of ways. So I'm trying to hit enough notes where you can see the outline and you're not doing a lot of guesswork. As a whole, I think there is somewhat of like, this family is just kind of like walking north. In that walking, there's a lot of like memories that flood back, so time is a little bit funky, but I really tried to keep it as like, all right, we are moving from this feeling all the way to the next as they interact with different environments. So it's a little bit more clear, I think. And then in terms of short stories, I love Daniel Alarcon's War by Candlelight. That book is amazing. And that's one that I kind of come back to quite a bit. There's a lot of conversations about art, but it's also a book that I think influenced me to write a little bit more politically. Because this book, at least, and that book, it talks about artists grappling with the state and how it affects the act of creation, right? Like when you're in the act of creation, how is that impacted?
Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Thanks.
Other questions?
Maybe two as well. First one for me is...
You gave away the store at the opening. Now everyone's going to have two questions.
Yeah, I'm taking two. For me, the first question with regard to how you interact with your students, I want to go back to something you talked about with regard to like painting with colors. And so that's where my brain is. How do you refine the colors that your students paint with? because I suspect that they're not necessarily using the same palette that you're using. So how do you hone in specifically on the colors that they're painting with, whether it's the spectrum of color, gray, yellow, whatever. How are you doing that? And then the second thing is, how did you arrive at the colors for your book now?
So can everyone hear? Do I need to repeat? Do I need to repeat it for the?
Yeah, for the live stream.
For the live stream. So the question was about kind of picking up on the trope of painting that we used earlier, and as a teacher, how does Andrés help students develop their painterly skills, their color spectrum, particularly when, and how did you develop it? How did you build it when it might not be there already? And how did you yourself develop the colors and the techniques that you paint with?
Yeah, thanks. Speak for myself first. I think it's a lot of my writing. I hate to revise. So boring. So boring. I'd rather just write a new poem. Right? I would be like, oh yeah, that was pretty good, not great. Let me just try again, all over again. But in that process, I do revise. All right. In the process of just like trying to write and write and write on the same theme or the same subject over and over again, I think that the commonality between those drafts means, at least to me, that there's something important that I should stick with it, right? So if that's an image, if that's a color, if that's a tone, if that's like these 3 words or whatever phrase it is, like, will I be 17 on a rooftop forever? I keep writing it, must be important, right? So I think in the process of like continually doing that, you begin to see your palette. And then when you're stuck on different days, you can go back to it, but also add in something different, right? So that it doesn't have, not every poem, my hope is, they don't all look the same, but there are like flourishes that are happening in each one that makes it feel simultaneously new and cohesive with the whole. And so I think with students, I'm not trying to give them a palette. What I'm trying to do is say, let's read a bunch of poems. Which ones do you like? How did they do it? Right? Like, what is their palette? And I think reading like full-length collections or one author consistently can really help develop that skill, right? It's really just about like, pick a dead poet, right? Because then you can just read everything that they ever wrote, right? You can read their letters, you can read, book 1, 2, and 3, you can read the interviews, and you can feel like, all right, this was the full trajectory. And once you can see that full trajectory, I think it's a great learning tool. So making students write essays, research papers in particular, can actually be helpful for like the creative process. That's my pitch.
It doesn't work that well. You just said that dead poets only write three collections.
No,
you're a young man. You have more collections ahead of you, man. Don't put on us now. I think we have time for one more question, or one 2-part question. In the back.
I had a question specifically about your style of writing, because we talked a lot about how there's this combination of the ethereal and the grounded reality, and specifically with this book, there's more of the mythological coming into it. And I was really curious what your journey was in creating that style of kind of exploring these themes, and what that was like, and where you ended up, or why you chose to write in this style.
The question is about how Andrés developed his style, mixing the ethereal, grounded reality, and mythology. Could I tack onto that? You just mentioned like reading one poet and like kind of diving deep. I feel like you have a really curated lineage. Can you talk a little bit about what that lineage is, and how you landed on the poets who have been, like you've mentioned, Franz Wright, Daniel Alarcón. I know Larry Levis is important to you.
Yeah. Thank you both. I think that in reading, particularly, like Franz Wright is the writer that influenced this book, I think, the most. And in a way, his books are sort of just unteachable. The poem just happens, it's great, you know it's great, And what else are you supposed to say about it?
I can't tell you how he did it.
I can't tell you how you did it. Yeah, exactly. I think that's also back to the like I wanted to write, or I would like to write poems that just work like that, right? And what I see in his writing is this clash that I'm trying to do, right? So Franz Wright is in a very different time, place, mindset, has an incredibly different life than I do, but I can look at the way that sort of like language bumps against, where two words bump against each other and create some sort of spark. And I can say, all right, one of that is grounded, one of that is a little bit more ethereal. What are my words? And what is my feeling that I want to convey, right? Because I have a system and a relationship to each word that I use, right? So I can kind of translate it. So I look at something that I really enjoy, and then I say, okay, how does Andrés Cerpa sort of experience the world? Let's put two words together.
Yeah. Yeah.
You all are amazing.
Yeah, thanks so much to you for writing this book, for the poems, for your answers. Time to line up, make this man work, sign some books.
And buy Iain's book, All the Possible Bodies, Alice James.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to do exactly what they just said. So if you're still with us on the live stream, you can buy copies of The Palace from the link in the description. If you're here, you can buy copies at the front. The more you buy, the more I get to reorder them. We're like 10 books away from selling out, so you should probably do that. Not right now, but in a minute, we're going to be really chill and stay seated first, and then I'm going to bring Andres to the back, and where my lovely coworkers are now pointing is where he's going to be signing and personalizing. We will have you line up down the center aisle once we're back there, and we'll get that going. Make sure to please grab your belongings. We pick up those chairs pretty quickly, and have a great and warm night. Thank you.